If there's anyone out there listening for the first, second, or third time or more, I need your 5-star rating and review after you listen to any of my episodes by clicking the ratings and reviews section in iTunes or Stitcher. Yo, you all are listening, but you're forgetting to leave a review. It's easy breezy 1, 2, 3. Let me walk you through it. Select 5 stars and click the write a review link. Log into your iTunes or Stitcher account. Enter the title and description of your review, then press submit. Voila! What woman doesn't shop at Target, otherwise known as Target? Come on, girls, let's keep it 100. Who doesn't shop online? Because you know what? You can shop in your undies, no bra, and even sip on a cold glass of champs. You can now shop Marimekko at Target. Playful, simple, and spirited prints. They're splashed with color, pattern, and purpose. Marimekko is a true hallmark of Finnish art and design that never goes out of style. And don't forget about Mother's Day. For those appliance-loving moms, we're taking 20% off KitchenAid, Black & Decker, Nespresso, Oster, and Anova products. Link to this week's deals from my new website, ninababel.com/podcast. You're going to look for episode number 16, which will give you this week's store discounts. What's up, Girly Nation? Welcome back to another edition of the Keep It 100 Girl Show, and it's coming to you live and direct from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. I'm your hostess with the Keep It 100 Girl Mostess. It's Nina Babel. As always, I keep it 100, I keep it real, and I keep it true. This is where women tell the truth, nothing but the truth, even if it's totally embarrassing or super cray-cray. I have stories from women, including me, with uncensored real talk. I mean, I talk to you guys like I talk to my own girlfriend, like how you would talk to your own girlfriends or guy friends. Some of you may freak out about the funny and emotional moments, but most importantly, there are some life lessons here that are surprising, edgy, and what most people would consider taboo. One of the rules of my podcast is we overshare. If it's your first time here, welcome, chica. And remember to hang up your inhibitions at the door. Connect with Nina on social media. I love Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. So use the handle at Nina Babel. Or you know what? Head over to my website. Hey, everybody. Remember, it's my new website at ninababel.com. And make sure you subscribe so you're in the know with my latest and greatest. Girly Nation, are you ready to keep it 100?
Ready to keep it 100, girl.
Oh, Nina, I keep it 100, baby.
Yes, I'm ready to keep it 100.
I'm ready to keep it 100, girl.
You know I'm going to keep it 100.
My hand is raised. How about yours? In last week's episode, myself and Girly Nation revealed our tell-all experiences, aha moments, advice, and lastly, mother friggin' girlfriend knowledge when it comes to the 5-minute man. Oops, it's not really the 5-minute. It's actually 1. With the help of expert sex therapist Dr. Megan Fleming, she kept me 100 by addressing all the shock, sexual awkwardness, and embarrassment for both men and women. Today's episode is a spin-off and continuation of episode number 5, which was What Your Mother Didn't Tell You, but Your Girlfriend Did, and episode number 12, which was the sex talk you didn't get. But this is what I want to drive here. This is the power of social media and Girly Nation. What makes this episode different is we have a real life example of a mother who's doing it right with her daughter. In my experiences so far and what you've heard, this is not the norm. We've all seen, heard, witnessed, or been a victim firsthand of the dysfunction that goes on generation after generation.
That non-sharing, or I should say glossing over of information continued.
Okay.
So there's things along the way that I was just like, I finally, when my daughter was born, I went down and I was on the 5th floor of the hospital and she worked on the 4th floor, and I marched myself right down there and I said, Mom, can we have a chat?
Right.
Because there were things things that, the way that she mentioned them, I was like, yeah, it didn't exactly go like that. I think that mentioning those things, that we've come a long way in my relationship with my mom, but I look back and when she tells me what she had nothing. They did not talk about anything. Her mom did not have any talk with her at all. I think in the next week I'll talk to my mom and ask her how she found out about her period and how, like, what she found out, you know, and when she found out. Because I know that I look at my mom like she did the best she could with what she had.
Right.
And it was an uncomfortable thing for her. And she has told me on many occasions, when she was young, nobody talked about it. It was just not talked about. Well, you know, my mom was born in 1941, so she would have hit that time around 1955, so it was the 50s. People just didn't talk about it back then, you know?
Here's 5 things you're going to learn. Number 1, the mom struggle of having the conversations with their daughters. Number 2, the embarrassing mommy moments. Number 3, the embarrassing daughter moments. Number 4, the mother-daughter walkthrough from puberty to sex. Number 5, it's all about planting the seeds and having the conversations. In fact, this mother-daughter duo is what we all should aspire to when it comes to having the frank and continuous conversations from puberty onwards. Laura is the mother and she's in her 40s, and Sarah is the daughter and she's currently now in her 20s and studying in college. Like any mother or mother-to-be, you strive to be the best mom possible from day one. From day one when you learn of that child growing in your womb. Some of us didn't have the tools in the toolbox to make it happen. Laura talks about the non-talk, what she calls the uncomfortableness and glossing of information from her mother. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. Here we have, once again, another woman from Girly Nation who is given that infamous book. If you're a mom struggling to have the puberty conversations with your daughter, listen up to the genesis of Laura's womanhood.
When I think back, it sort of came in 3 sections, my life and my relationship with my mom and how the topic came up. The first time, I would say it was the non-talk. I think I was probably, I guess I might have been 7 or 8, and my mom sat me down and said, I need to talk to you about something. And she didn't really say much else, and then she handed me a book, and it was called Where Do I Come From? And it was filled with sort of cartoon caricatures of a man and a woman, and I just remember feeling like not knowing what is this? It's a book, but this is weird, and not really understanding, really looking at it kind of in a certain respect. I was a little scared because all of a sudden I had to realize that this was something that Mom was trying to tell me, and I didn't really understand it. So I just sort of went in the bedroom, had the book, and that was sort of the end of it, and I didn't really learn much else until we had, I think it was health class when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and like most people, that's how I learned more about anatomy, but no one really ever talked to me about the particulars about a man and a woman and sex. So that was sort of the first start of things.
It's all about change and breaking the cycle. This was a personal vow Laura made to herself. So let's listen to when this whole talk started for both mother and daughter.
We really got in depth with everything. Mom showed me when I was like 5 or so, just like on the computer, kind of like her book, just like this is what a boy looks like, these are the don't touch parts of a boy, these are the don't touch parts of a girl. Which I know sounds a little bit crazy to some people, but it made it that much easier to be able to talk to her as I was growing up. And I've heard, people that have judged that, and it's like, you know what, I'm a good person, and I feel very comfortable talking to people about sex and sexuality, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin in that form. So, if it took her teaching me that at that age, then I don't think that that's wrong. And that's the sad part about society today, is it's such a taboo conversation, and it shouldn't be.
We all look for allies and support during our personal journeys, just to fill the gaps in areas where we're too shy, nervy, and embarrassed to ask. You would think as moms, having gone through something similar, that they would understand. Laura is living proof. So let's start from the beginning with her journey with puberty.
For me, I got my period, but I didn't really develop until I was, I think I was probably sophomore year. I'd had my period for a full year before I really started to develop. So for me, the bra experience was me, my mom taking me to the store and basically picking out 3 bras for me and saying, here, this is what you're going to wear. There was no, this is what it's for and this is how it works. And it wasn't until I got to work and had my own job where I went out and I started buying my own bras and was, felt like, okay, this is what I want. I know, my mom bought me bras that didn't have underwire, that didn't make me feel supported at all. And I remember one specific instance in high school. I want to say I was probably just about 16. I got elbowed, not intentionally, by a boy, and oh my God, it hurt so bad. And from then on, I was like, I just want more padding. I just wanted more padding. I can't believe this hurts so bad. And it probably was leading right up to my period, so that's probably why it hurt so bad. But those are the things that you really rely on the people in your life to help you through. And my mom grew up in an era where her mom talked to her not at all. So for me, just the fact that my mom handed me a book
Right.
when she was having to talk with me was, I guess it was a step forward for her. But for me, I didn't have a lot of sharing with my mom, so my friends were really, really important. And I made up my mind kind of through high school that if I ever had a girl, things were going to be completely different.
So this is how she turned it around. I'm sure all you mothers and mothers-to-be always have that if-then statement, right? If I was to have a girl, then things will be different, right? Laura has promised herself that she would be open, and she has no regrets because you know what? Her daughter has been prepared for all the different phases of her life.
First of all, I didn't know what I was going to have. That was the final surprise. I honestly thought I was going to have a boy, and I ended up, on the day she was born, I found out that she was a girl. And it wasn't until she probably was toddler age that I really started thinking about, okay, this is my little girl, and I really don't want her to have that unknowing, that kind of feeling like you're lost in a sea feeling, going through any of the experiences of being a girl. So what that started with for me was a body awareness when she was old enough to know what her private parts were. She'll tell you that I sat her down, pretty early on. This was at the dawn of the age of the internet where, you could still find almost just about anything you wanted to. And I sat her down with the computer and I showed her pictures of anatomy, of a boy's anatomy and a girl's anatomy. And I wanted her to be very clear that what was okay, what was not okay for touch, the whole good touch, bad touch thing was the popular phraseology back then. And I wanted her, not only that, but I wanted her to realize that it's her body. Her body belonged to herself. And for me, I thought that was really, really important. It was a good start. And then as I went along, I guess my mantra was, if she asks me any questions, I'm going to answer them. And I told her that. I said, if you have any questions, periodically I would share with her things. And most of the time she didn't have questions at the time. It was when things would crop back up that we would have questions. But getting back to the pregnancy, when I found out that she was a girl, after pregnancy itself was pretty uncomplicated, it was a good pregnancy. But when I went into labor, no one had told me. I mean, you read about it, it can be painful and awful, but, this is the one time that my mom actually opened up to me. And she's like, well, I just want to prepare you that, labor pains are kind of like really bad menstrual cramps. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe my experience will be like my mom's. Well, it was not.
Wow.
But I had my daughter in the same hospital where my mom worked. And while my daughter was her dad, the next day, less than 24 hours after she was born, I marched right down to my mom's office, and I sort of pulled her aside. I said, Mom, can we go for a walk? And I talked with her. I'm like, Mom, that was not really bad menstrual cramps. That was really the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life. You know, not to scare anybody away from having kids, because obviously memory saves things, and it was awesome because I had a beautiful baby girl, but it was, you know, that was one of those things where she was trying to gloss it over and not scare me, but I really could have used some heavy-duty doses of honesty and truth. So that part of it was kind of, you know, that was another one of those letdowns where I decided that this is not going to happen to my daughter. So I think that story, along with a lot of other things, have allowed me to share those things with Sarah, and she'll tell you that story was often a good source of birth control for her. But as far as pregnancy goes, that's my pregnancy story. But, you know, going all through my childhood, my experience through puberty, and my pregnancy, those were the things that I just said, yeah, I'm going to be open and honest with my daughter about everything. And going forward, I was. And it was only when it got back to starting to ask me questions. See, those were the times where, like, I don't know if she remembers, but I blushed a lot. And it was like, well, I promised myself I was going to be open, and I was going to, you know, tell her everything that she was ready for. And I did, and there were times where I probably ate more of my shoes than I needed to. But it's totally been worth it, you know, to be able to know that she's been prepared for all those different phases in her life.
So let's check Laura's report card to see how she's made the grade with the puberty talk. Sarah shares her own puberty experiences, and you know what? The biggest takeaway for Sarah was not being judgmental.
For me, I was not as much of a late bloomer as my mom was. I believe I got my period, and Mom, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't totally remember this stuff. But I think I was either 12 or 13. You were 7th grade when you got your period. So I was like 13 or 14. Yeah. But so for me, it was kind of awkward because when I got my period, I wasn't actually with her. I was at my dad's house. And, you know, I had boyfriends, but I don't think I had even had my first kiss at that point yet. Yeah, because I didn't have my first kiss until I was 15 or so. It wasn't really, like, I don't know, as much as I wasn't a late bloomer, it wasn't really connected. Like, the period didn't really, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, wow, like, you have a kid now. But I had my period when I was, I think I was 13. And I was at my dad's, and I told my dad, and he sent me to my stepmom, which is really awkward. And so she gave me a pad, and that was pretty much it. And I talked to my mom about it later. I don't remember exactly what I said. I just remember talking to her about it. And even with my dad and my stepmom, I've always been pretty open with them too, just because of how I was raised. I've just always been pretty open with the adults in my life about stuff like that. But I would definitely say I'm more open with my mom. So there's that one, and then I believe I bought my first bra with my mom, but it wasn't even a real bra. It was one of those, like, I felt like I was starting to poke out, but I really wasn't. Like, I felt like my nipples poked out a little bit more than than they used to, but I really had nothing there. So we went to I think it was like Walmart. We went to Walmart, and she got me those, like, the bras that really are just like as thin as a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
But they teach you, you know, they teach you how to clip it in the back. So, like, it's really not for its purpose. It's more so, it was a confidence and comfortable thing for me. And, you know, it meant a lot that, you know, she was willing to go and do that because, you know, I didn't really have anybody else in my life that really would have done that. I wouldn't have gone bra shopping with my mom or my dad, and my stepmom wasn't ready for me to be in that stage of my life yet. You know, the same thing with shaving. I remember shaving was a really big thing for me. I have really dark hair, so I really wanted to shave my legs. And I remember I might have been 7th grade. It was kind of like my period, and that kind of came at the same time, if not a little bit sooner. Just because I had really long dark hair on my legs, and I was in soccer, and I didn't like it when people, like the girls would pick on me. They're like, well, why can't you shave, you know? So I remember talking to my mom, and she taught me how to shave downwards first because she didn't want me to cut myself, and you know, from there I moved on, and it was one of those things, like, as much as I didn't always live with my mom, I always kind of relied on her to help me through those things, and I always felt comfortable with her. I always felt like, she's not going to be judgmental, and that was my biggest thing, honestly. I wanted someone that I was able to talk to about these things and not be judgmental and not feel in any way scared, and I was really, really lucky to have a mom like that, The thing is for me, a lot of these things weren't awkward just because I had that. It was one of those situations where for her, I'm sure, like she said, some of those conversations were awkward. But for me, it wasn't that bad. It was more so a fact of these are things that I really do want to know the information about. And there were times that I was just wondering. Like I told her, I was like, I'm not planning on doing anything with this. I was just wondering.
Right.
And there were times that it was a little bit much, and I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm okay. I was just wondering. I don't need to know every detail. But, especially when it got into the times where, there were times where she didn't know exactly what to say, so she would just use her own experiences. And there were times where I was like, wow, Mom, I don't want to, I don't want to know that about you.
Was that more out of embarrassment or not wanting to envision your mother?
Yeah, it was more so not wanting to envision my mother in that way.
We all have one. Sarah talks about her first-time tampon experience.
I had actually gotten my period, and I was on the soccer team, and I didn't have a pad, and nobody had a pad. All of my friends had tampons. So one of my friends gave me a tampon, and I tried to use it, and I was just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. That was definitely one of those moments where I was like, okay. And I put the tampon in, and I thought I had done it right, but it hurt, and it didn't feel right, and it was uncomfortable, and I thought that was normal, and then that made me think, why do people use these if this is how it's supposed to work? And like I said, I lived with my dad and my stepmom some of the time too, and my stepmom did not want me using tampons. She wasn't ready for that. Like I said, she wasn't ready for me to be going through what I was going through, which I think a lot of parents go through. They're not ready to see their kid grow up to a certain extent. It gets to a point where I was really blessed with the fact that even if my mom wasn't ready for me to be going through the things that I was going through, she kind of put that aside, and she didn't focus on what she was ready for. She took on what she thought I was ready for. So anyway, as far as the tampon thing, I came home. I went to her house that weekend or whatever, and and I was like, when am I going to be allowed to use tampons? And how does this work? And I couldn't figure it out. And so she took out, I think she had 3 different versions of tampons in our house, because in our house we've just always had way too many of those types of products. And, she didn't show me how to do it in these, but she took it out of the packaging, and she said, you fold it like this, and you push this, and this is what comes out. She took the actual physical tampon thing, and said, this is what comes out, and this is where it's supposed to go. And I think you actually showed me on the computer, either that or I looked it up not long after that, just to see how it's supposed to fit in your body, because that's really what she told me. She always said, I should be comfortable with my body. If I was comfortable with it, be comfortable with touching myself down there and really figuring out how my anatomy is shaped, because my anatomy is shaped different than everybody else's. Everybody's anatomy is a little bit differently shaped. And that was a big growing step for me. Was it was okay for me to figure out what I'm like down there. It wasn't this taboo thing where it was like, oh, you can't touch down there. And the fact that really helped me be more comfortable with putting tampons in. It was a good learning curve, but it was awkward too. And honestly, it was something that I was caught off guard about too, until I had that moment where I had to try to put a tampon in and didn't know how to do it. So it was one of those things that it caught Mom off guard, but it was also something that until that happened to me, I hadn't really thought about it either.
It's more than checking the box, right? It's talking about the emotions and feelings that result from our actions. The benefit of Laura planting this seed really, really early is that it makes it 10 times easier for her daughter Sarah to have these conversations, whether it's her own circle of friends or her long-term boyfriend and her future husband.
Having a conversation between either friends or with your parents is, I don't know, it just seems really odd to me. As far as the emotions of things go, that was the one thing that when I started having sex as a teenager, I felt so alone and vulnerable because, I mean, even as a teenager, I didn't have a lot of girlfriends. So when I decided to have sex with my boyfriend at that time, it was really like, I didn't feel like I had anybody really to talk to. So whether Sarah had that friend or not, I was going to be that person to support her. Like, you know, like we have adult conversations about sex lives, not me so much with my fiance, but when she has questions about the emotions of dealing with, you know, long-term sexual relationships, how do you keep things alive, blah,
right.
blah, blah, those kinds of things. We actually talk about that stuff now. You know, for me, that's where Sarah and I have become more of a friendship, and it's important to me that I let her know that it's okay to talk about those things. It's okay to talk about with your friends, you know, what you do and don't like and what you will and won't do with a guy. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's healthy to have an open conversation about those things, not only with girlfriends and with your, you know, with your mom if you so choose, but also I wanted to encourage her to talk about it with her boyfriend. And I was just thinking that, you know, the fact that we had such an open relationship made it 10 times easier to have open communication about it with my boyfriend. And it was one of those things, like, it was more uncomfortable for him to talk about it than me, which was odd, you know, especially getting into the gory detail of it. But it's gotten to the point now where it's kind of roles reversed, and he's like, tell me, you know, not to get gory, but, like, tell me what you do like, tell me what you don't like. And I don't always have those answers, so he's like, it's just this back and forth now where it's like, but it's nice that we can have those conversations, and it's not obnoxiously awkward.
Does that capture the mood, the feeling, the embarrassment, or even the nervousness that you and I must have felt one time or another with our own mother? We all struggle with something. And if you don't have a good baseline for communication, the tendency or the natural tendency really is to bottle them up. Sound all too familiar?
There's something said for maturing and realizing that communication, whether it's between you and your daughter, and then that stems from there to now my daughter is a better communicator because of that.
Exactly.
For me, I would say in a good, healthy sexual relationship, communication is at least 50% of it. You know, just being able and comfortable to tell your partner what you want, how you want it, you know, and being willing to try new and different things to keep things alive and exciting.
Never mind the sexual part. Learning constructive communication is key. We are a product of our environment. And outside the bedroom, this communication skill, it transcends all borders, from friendships, relationships with our own parents, and even future spouse. How many times when someone asks you what's wrong, what do you say? Nothing. I mean, come on, women do that all the time.
That's just where I come from, and I sort of extended that to my relationships, not just with my daughter, but with my future spouse, and, you know, I think that it's so important. I think for me, it was one of those, like, I always knew communication was really important in sex, but some of the reasons that, like, me and my boyfriend broke up was because I personally didn't always know how to communicate about, like, how I was feeling or stuff like that. Like, that's something that I've struggled with, and that's not of my mom's, like, that's not my mom's fault at all. It's just something that, like, I have no issue talking about what do I like, what do I not like, things like that as far as sex goes. But when it comes to saying my emotions and, you know, outside of the bedroom, what does this relationship mean to me, which is quite the opposite of a lot of girls, is something that I struggle with.
You struggle with the delivery of it, or is it?
Both, like knowing how I felt and explaining to him how I felt. A lot of the times when it comes to my emotions, I'm really good at bottling them up and then kind of just exploding, and he hates that, and it's something that we've really had to work towards. And, you know, him saying, you know, if I do something that upsets you, you need to tell me when it happened. So it's one of those things, like, we all struggle with something. And that's just what happens to be me and my boyfriend's struggle. But we definitely broke up for a couple months when I came to college because our communication was just really hard. You know, we very muchly so are physical communicators. So to be 7 hours away from him, it was very hard to communicate otherwise. And we ended up breaking up for a couple months. And when we got back together over the summer, I was like, this is something that we have to work on. And we spent all summer working on it. And we're 10 times better now. So it's just one of those things where any relationship takes work, whether it's a relationship between a mother and a daughter or a significant other or, you know, anybody. Any relationship takes work. You just have to figure out what you have to work on.
Some of you may feel like this is too open of a relationship to have. Well, Sarah responds on the openness of their relationship.
She was very open with me, and I knew that she would never lie to me. She always told me whatever it was that she could. That's how she was, and I was really, really blessed to have that.
Is it safe to say, like, this is a true mother-daughter relationship? It wasn't like a girlfriend relationship?
Oh, dear Lord, no, not at all.
Laura wants to make clear that this was a true mother-daughter relationship. Sarah also wants to make clear that she was a mom in those mom moments. And their conversations always had a motherly feel growing up.
No, because the thing is like I said, with like a girlfriend type relationship, sometimes you play it up a little bit, or, you know, it's more so talking like on a friendly level. For she and I, it was definitely more of like she was being my mom in those moments. It wasn't until like more recently where we've talked about more so like, because I'm going through something that she's never been through. I've been with my boyfriend for almost 4 years, and I'm only 20. Mm-hmm. She never went through that. So it's at this point when we talk about stuff, it's more so like a friendship where it's just trying to really understand where each other comes from. Mm-hmm. But when it was talking about and teaching me and me asking these questions and learning just, you know, the ins and outs of sex and emotions and growing up, it was very much we still had that motherly feel of like she was there to support me, protect me, love me, and really teach me. You know, it wasn't one of those like, I'm going to tell you all these stories about my life. She would tell me stories, like I said, but it was really for education purpose. It didn't have the same feel as like a girlfriend.
Between Laura and Sarah, this was always a two-way street of TMI moments that were shared between the both of them. How do you talk about it with your daughter? You can talk about it with your girlfriend, right? So what's the difference? Well, it started with blowjobs, putting a condom on, and a circumcised penis.
As she was getting into her first relationship, where we knew that it was going to be moving into more of a physical relationship, there were times where she would ask me specifics about, you know, what is this and what is that? Like, what is a blowjob? What is, you know, how does it feel? How do you do that? You know, the specifics about the mechanics, where I was like, So, you know, and she's always been blunt and forthright, and she doesn't hold anything back. So for me, I'm like, okay, she's ready to hear it. Here we go. And it's kind of like this roller coaster ride where you're like wondering, am I going to throw up through this? But most of the time, and it's funny because every time she would ask me, almost always, it would be in the car. Her father and I shared custody at about that same time where she was going through that phase. And it, for us, meant, half-hour, 45-minute car ride on either end. So those tended to be the times when she would ask me those questions. So we never got into any accidents, but it was definitely a lot of fun. Trying not to, I didn't want her to think that I was unnerved or that it was something I didn't want to share with her, but it's always like, how do you talk about this with your daughter? Like, I could talk about it with my girlfriends, but how do you talk about how you handle when a guy wants you to give him a blowjob, or when he wants to take things further than you're ready? How do you talk about that? And mainly I just sort of went from my own experience. And, I guess I could look at it this way. So far, so good. And hopefully I think that she feels the same way.
So I'm going to go into one of those BJ moments. Like, is it just words? Did you describe it? Did you show her? Did you show her with your mouth? Like, what were the type of gestures?
I think because most of the time when I was driving, it was usually descriptive words. And I think for us, it was like, for an example, like how to put on a condom. That's a conversation that I remember. Like, I described it like it was a banana. And, I said that when a guy has the tip of their penis, depending on if they're circumcised or uncircumcised, and I made the judgment call that I thought that her first boyfriend was circumcised. So I described it like it's that little French bicycle helmet. Like you see, they have in the Tour de France. Like, I described it like that. I said, those funky French bicycle helmets? And I said, that's what it's like. There's this little bump electrician or the mechanic. I think I probably was like, I hope she's ready for this. I hope it's not. I always wondered, am I giving her too much information? But, the descriptions, I think it's been good. I think I've done a good job at trying to be very thorough, and I didn't want to shy away from anything. I wanted to be as descriptive as she wanted me to be, and I fully expected that if she's like, "Whoa, Mom, that's too much," she would have told me.
So the normal tendency for all of us is to block the TMI moments. Those are the boundaries that we naturally set as a child to a parent, as a parent to a child. We don't want to know or have the vision in our heads of our moms, dads having sex. Dr. Megan Fleming refers to this as cultural collusion.
And I understand that, listen, I've got young kids. They don't want to think about me having sex. I don't want them to think about me having sex. I don't want to think when they're ready that they're having sex. I understand that cultural collusion of okay, we're not talking about that. But again, it goes back to this idea. It's about pleasure, right? We should all feel pleasure in our bodies at any age.
If you haven't had the exposure, most daughters would be creeped out going to their mother about relationships, sex, intimate period questions, body image questions. But Sarah has more TMI moments that you and I put together could ever say. Remember, this doesn't work for everybody. It's not the same magic formula for everybody. And you know what? Just censor the appropriateness of the conversation as needed.
Telling me this is how a blowjob works, this is, the penis anatomy, these are the parts that feel good to a guy, these are the parts that don't. Those I would have been fine hearing. But when she gets into, this is what I've done, or, for me, this is what's worked. And because it was something that I was self-conscious about. When my boyfriend first asked me about it, I didn't have any clue. I really hadn't seen that many penises, to be honest. It's a really uncomfortable situation. To have a penis in your mouth is really awkward. Especially at the age of 18, 19, 20, and you're just like, I don't know how to deal with this. I mean, it's been on his body for the last 20-something years. He knows how to do it better than I do. Why do I have to do it?
Right.
Those are the things that I was okay with. The times that it got a little TMI for me was when my mom really didn't, she can't tell me. I mean, she told me what she could, but as far as, what works, what doesn't work, because I was like, when it got into the point of, pleasuring a person was when it got awkward for me, because not every person is the same. So she would tell me what she's done in the past to please people, but, you got to realize, and she said this, you got to realize that it's not the same for everybody.
Right.
So those were the times that it kind of got TMI for me, and I know that she was doing it still for the right purposes. It's just there were times that I was like, okay, I don't want to imagine you in that form. You're still my mom, type of deal. And that's to the point where, we still have a really open relationship, and, I have gotten more comfortable with conversations like that, but definitely at first, when I wasn't even really doing these things, I was just asking the questions, that's when I was kind of like, okay.
Sarah now explains how the openness of communication felt, dating back to the good touch, bad touch conversations with her mother to present day.
I was so young that when she was showing me, the whole, these are the anatomies, good touch, bad touch type thing, it was just kind of something that I was like, oh, okay, I was really young, and it was just, your mom's teaching you something. I remember her teaching it to me, but I don't remember there being a whole lot of, awkwardness to me, you know what I mean? I was just so young that I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. And the funny thing is she remembers more so the specific questions I asked. That's not really the big picture of what I remember, because honestly, I had the easy job. I just had to ask what I was thinking, whereas she's the one that really had to, get into the nitty-gritty, dirty detail of what it was. But I just, honestly, overall, I was just really thankful that she was so open with me, and she was always, as she said that I was born, she was just as blunt, but in a good way. She was very much so, this is my experiences. That doesn't mean it's going to be exactly how it is for you, but this is what I can tell you, on top of the fact that the things that were mechanical and, a little bit more detail-oriented and maybe TMI, it was just the fact that when I asked, she was never accusatory. She was like, why are you asking us? Why did you, she was never like that, which was really nice. She always gave me the facts, and she never judged me for what I asked. She didn't ask me, where did you hear that? Where's the background from that? She was just straightforward with me, which was really nice. It made it so that I felt comfortable coming back to her again, which I think is something that I'm not a parent, so I'm not judging people on how they parent their kids. I'm just saying that for me, that's why I was able to stay open with my mom, whereas I feel like from what I've heard from some of my friends, their parents were, if they ever did ask those questions or if they did ever come to them and say, hey, I did have sex, their parents would get really upset. And it's like, for me, that's what I would be concerned about.
Follow through. How many of you make the grade with follow through? Moms, if you don't know, listen how you can get hipper to the game.
There's a little bit of everything. You hear stuff in high school. You hear the older kids that talk. I was really good at becoming friends with the older kids. I generically didn't spend a lot of time with kids in my grade, and when I did, it wasn't really on a really good friend basis. But when you hang out with kids that are older than you, you hear stuff, and you're like, well, is that true? What is that? And sometimes you don't want, especially in my situation, because I was friends with older kids, I didn't want to ask. I was like, I don't want to be the dorky younger kid that asks all the stupid questions. So I went to my mom and asked, and I figured she would have a better insight, and she would give me a more real description of what it was than my friends would, making my friends would play it up or, make me scared or, just try to get a reaction out of me. Whereas I knew with my mom it was a safe place. I knew it was a place where, she would give it to me straightforward. She would tell me what was going on. And I knew she wasn't going to judge me. Whereas, you ask those things of your friends sometimes. And my big thing is I have trust issues with people that are like my age. So I never wanted to ask them. I didn't want them to judge me. I wasn't one of those people that felt comfortable leaning on my friends and stuff like that.
Struggling to have those conversations with your daughter? Need help with the anxiety and the nervousness, Mom? Want to break the cycle, but you just don't know how? Educating Her is a new mother-daughter retreat starting this summer 2016. Visit our website at www.educatingher.com to learn more. Laura has created a safe and comfortable place for Sarah. Let's talk about having the conversation, multiple conversations, continuous conversations. Both Laura and Sarah will give you their points of view when it comes to giving and receiving in their relationship.
Me and my boyfriend Jesse had been together it was pretty close to 6 months though, and me and Jess had started to have more sexual conversations, kind of like sexting and stuff like that, and just talking over the phone more so just more of those sexual conversations. And his mom actually, and when we started having those conversations, I texted him and I was like, I would be more comfortable having sex if we sat everyone down and had an adult conversation about it and just kind of put it out there, that we were thinking about this. And so Jesse actually got in trouble and he had his phone taken away and his mom read the text and she was actually really, really impressed with the fact that I was being such an adult about it. And of course, because she read it, she was like, okay, let's make this happen. So we all sat down, we went to my boyfriend's house, and we had dinner, and, it was just me and Mom and Jess and his two parents, and we sat down and we talked, and one of those awkward moments that was kind of funny, Jesse, my boyfriend's dad, Chris, is very, very blunt, and he was trying to make Jesse understand the seriousness of me losing my virginity and that it wasn't going to be this romantic thing.
Who talks? Wait, let's back up for a minute. Who talks about losing their virginity not only with their mom, but with their boyfriend's parents?
My mom had already taught me that it was going to be painful. And I forget exactly his wording, but he said something like to Jess that it was going to be extremely painful for me, and he just looked at me, and then I was just like, my eyes got really big, even though I already knew it. It was just the way he said it was very intense, and he's like, he pulled me aside after. He's like, I hope I didn't scare you. I was just trying to make Jess realize that this isn't going to be some big romantic thing for him. So it was really amazing and awkward conversation all at the same time, because I gained a lot of respect from and for my boyfriend's parents, the fact that they were willing to be so comfortable about this conversation, which I'm sure it really wasn't comfortable, but the fact that they were willing to try, because I had heard of so many parents that were like, you're not having sex with my kid, da-da-da-da-da, and it turns into this really big mess. It was just really nice that it wasn't like that for me. And I think a big part that played into that was the fact that I was willing to have that conversation. And the fact that my mom had taught me that it was really an important thing to be open and honest about these things. So it took a lot of the surprise and the guessing out of me losing my virginity, because it was like, we didn't have to go sneak off and have sex for the first time in the back of a car or something like that. We had a night where it was he and I, and he came over and it was in a bed, it was in my bedroom, it wasn't this big awkward thing, and having sex for the first time is awkward, but it took a lot of the other outside stuff away from that, and it was just awkward within itself. So, and I'm really thankful that I was able to have that moment. And like I said, going back to the original question, my mom prepared me. She's like, I wasn't told what sex for the first time was going to be like.
This scenario is polar opposite to what most of us women go through. First off, Laura drew on her own experiences to pretty much set the stage for Sarah about losing your virginity and saying, hey, it's not a big romantic thing. For Sarah, it took the guessing game out of what to expect when it comes to losing your virginity or not having so many false hopes.
She didn't have that conversation, and so first she taught me, it's going to hurt, the mechanics of it, but then this was the first time that she really got into the emotion of it with me. She was like, I want you to be comfortable with any emotion that you have. You may be confused, you may be upset, you may be happy. She's like, but it's okay to have those emotions because this is a big deal. So it was a really good learning curve for me and Mom, I think. And I just, like I said, I'm really, really grateful that I was able to have that experience, because I know so many people that haven't had an experience like that.
Right. I would say many.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty good testament to Jesse's parents, too, because I don't know if you remember, Sarah, but they called me ahead of time before anything happened with all of us going to their house for dinner. Jesse's parents and me sat down at a Dunkin' Donuts and had sort of like the parent-to-parent talk, which is when I really realized that, his parents are good people and they want the best for their son, but they also, for me, it was nice because I could be open with them about how open I was with you. And I think that kind of set the stage so that you and Jesse didn't have the normal difficulties that a lot of young kids do. You could actually, get into the intimacy and the things that really matter about your sex life. It didn't have to be about, let's make sure, A, you're not going to get pregnant, and B, that you know how it's supposed to go, and then you can just move on to what your normal sex life at that point should be. So for me, I think just knowing that you had that experience makes me feel like, well, cool, I guess I did all right,
To some of you here, this is where unconventional comes in, if it hasn't kicked in already. Imagine being able to exchange stories with your own mother about losing your virginity. Let's hear what both Laura and Sarah have to say about that.
Oh, God. It really, literally was. It was painful. It was painful. And in my mind, I grew up in, it would have been mid-'80s that I lost my virginity. So it was like the height of the big hairband, girls being sexy, and, I had a huge crush on somebody who was, I was a sophomore. I think he was a senior in high school, and he had come over. My mom, I don't remember, my mom wasn't home that night either, not for the whole night, but I think she had gone out with her friends or something, so the guy had come over, and we weren't even boyfriend-girlfriend yet, but things got kind of heated, and we were being sexual, but we weren't having sex yet, and because I had a huge crush on him, I was like, it got to that point, and I didn't say no, and then we had sex, I think it was on the couch, so the way that we ended up having sex was just a normal missionary position, and I had no idea. And it just, when he did it and he went inside me, it was painful. I was like, whoa! And, I hate to say it, but we didn't finish. I, recoiled back, I jumped up, and I went into the bathroom, and I was like, oh my God, that hurt so bad.
Right.
And that was, it was an awful experience. And that's how I lost my virginity. It was not a pleasant experience. So, at that point, I had been, my mom, fortunately, she brought me into They had like a pediatric doctor who did the birth control, but she put me on birth control because my periods at that point, I'd been having my period for a couple of years, and it was really erratic. So she put me on the pill so that my periods would become normal. And I think probably in the back of her mind, she knew that I was going to start having sex, but she didn't really have any way to approach it with me. So, after that, when I got my first serious boyfriend, which was probably about a year later, that's when I really learned, like, the mechanics of sex and that it actually could be good. But, I went for a whole year. Like, I had sex with that one guy. We didn't have sex again. And it was like, oh, God, if this is what sex is like, forget it. I have no desire whatsoever to, do more of it. I'm like, why would people even do this? My life where I was like, why do people do what is so good about sex? Because that sucked.
Right.
I would definitely say my first time having sex was like that. It's not like I was thinking about my mom when I had sex for the first time, but afterwards, I was not surprised at all at how it went. You know what I mean? It wasn't this big romanticized thing in my head. I was very well prepared for when I lost my virginity. I knew it wasn't going to be enjoyable. It wasn't a big thing where I was like, oh, I need rose petals and candles. It was one of those, like, by the time it happened, and I hate to make it sound so bad, but it was one of those, like, I want to get this over so that we can have those good moments. You know what I mean? I still really saw it as an important thing. I didn't just give my virginity away to anybody. As you can see, I've been with him for 4 years. You know what I mean?
All right, Miss Laura, what level of detail did you really give about what feels good and being honest with your feelings?
I think I did. I basically, had it more, I was really about the feeling, because for me, that's how I felt. I felt like the feelings sort of take over. Like, you get that intense passion, like, this feels really good. I want to do more of that. It's that consciousness of, do I let that feeling get away with me, and do I keep going, or do I sit back and go, wait, no, I'm scared, I'm not ready. And so we had that conversation around that kind of intimacy inside your head was easier to have with Sarah than the mechanics conversations. Because of the way I lost my virginity, I was more open to, look, this is how you're going to feel as, if he's doing things to you and those things feel good, you may want him to keep going, or you might not. And you need to do what's right for you. You need to do what feels good to you. I guess I didn't get into the mechanics of, if he's putting his hands on her boobs or if he's putting his hands down her pants, because I figured she would get that because everybody's individual. I didn't get into a lot of that, but I gave her the permission in her own mind and her own body to feel what she's feeling and not feel guilty about it. If she wanted to go further, that's up to her. It's her body. That's goes way back to the beginning. It's her body. She gets to choose. But knowing that, she should choose, and if she's not comfortable, then she should say no. So for me, that was sort of the getting into the how things feel and being honest with your feelings. Because honestly, when you're having sex as an adult, that's what it's all about. You have to be honest with your feelings, and you have to be able to be honest with your partner and say, yeah, I like this. No, I don't like this. And that's the only way you're going to have a decent sex life is if you're talking about it.
For Sarah, it answered the questions, why is my body acting and reacting the way it is? She was able to identify and recognize early on, okay, this is what turns me on when she started to have sex or even while she was having sex. She was able to connect the dots.
Yeah, I think that part of that was that stuff I didn't really ask a whole lot about. It wasn't one of those things that I really had questions on because I had been raised that way. I was pretty comfortable with my body, and I was pretty comfortable of, okay, I'm turned on right now. There were times that, as far as, my panties being wet or whatever, there were times that I had, discharge or, I didn't realize that I was as aroused as I was. I remember a conversation that we did have where I was, once I did start having sex, where there were times that in my head I was really turned on, but down there I just wasn't having it. And then vice versa, where, I didn't think I was really that turned on, and then I would go to the bathroom after watching a movie, and I am, ready to go down there. So it wasn't until I started, having sex that it was one of those questions of, why is my body like this? So it wasn't really one of those things where it was, a question of, am I aroused, am I not aroused, or, are these okay? It was more of, why is my body acting the way it's acting?
So let's talk about the struggle and getting over it. Laura shares her desire to minimize her daughter's negative experiences and, you know what, not letting her own nervousness get in the way of that.
For me, it went back to my experience and what I grew up with, and knowing how nervous and scared I was in those moments that I didn't know or didn't have knowledge of what was happening, that made me make that decision to be honest, be open, and share everything that I can, or I should say everything that was appropriate. And I know it sounds strange, but as a mother, even though you're talking to your child, you get butterflies in your stomach, and you wonder if you're sharing the right information or, the appropriate information. It's just that I had that desire. I'm not going to let my daughter go through a negative experience if I have some sort of control over that, if I have some sort of ability to, inform her and protect her. And for me, I guess my piece of advice is don't let that nervousness or that even just the nervousness of fumbling with the words, don't let that stand in the way of creating a really close and educated relationship with your kids. Because on the flip side, I had no idea the impact of those decisions as I went along that would have. So for me, looking at it from the flip side, I can go, okay, I really did make the right decision, but I wasn't thinking about that as I went along. I was just, kids don't come with instruction books. So For me, it was just fly by the seat of my pants, and I think I'm doing what's right. So you really it has to be that happy medium between doing what feels good for you as a parent and helping your child move along through the world so that they're prepared for whatever might come along.
So Laura's approach was this. She filtered the censorship based on Sarah's age and what she was ready for without being too far ahead or too far behind.
For me, it was, I know it's silly, but I went back through my age group where, I know how old I was when my mom handed me the book, and I know how old I was when I got my period, and I kind of gauged where I thought Sarah might be at the time, and I know there were times where I shared too much, or there were times where she'd come to me, not very frequently, but there were times where she'd come to me and she'd heard something in school where I was like, oh, I didn't catch that. And things I didn't think of, I think it was probably the first time where she wanted to use a tampon. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that because I didn't start using tampons till further along. So you kind of gauge what you think they might be ready for, but maybe you're too far ahead or too far behind, but you just got to keep up with it.
Sarah compares mommy ed versus sex ed and really what hurt and what helped. It's a tough subject as a daughter to bring up. Sarah gives Girly Nation her advice to women who are not in the same situation.
Not really. I mean, health class was interesting, but when they do the stupid little sex ed in 5th grade it's interesting to hear mom's perspective because like she said, she learned a lot of her anatomy and stuff in that, which I think is good for students. But I remember sitting there in I think it was 4th grade for my school, and I remember sitting there, and they did this anonymous question box, and some of the questions were just things that I felt like I had known forever. I was trying really hard not to judge. It was just one of those things I felt like it was okay to find for me. But once I got into health class, I found that kind of interesting. I was happy that they talked about birth control, when I got to health class, because I know a lot of places in the country are very abstinence is what they talk about, and for me it wasn't so much learning it, and so 95% of what I learned in health class and that little thing was refresher and review, but there were things that I was happy to see in my health classes and stuff like that.
Being comfortable. That's always not the case.
I would say I've had this conversation, and it's a tough subject as a daughter. Especially, when when the mom's not ready for you to grow up, it's hard. And I know a lot women that are my mom's age were raised the same way my mom was, but instead of having that opinion of, I need to be open with my daughter, it's still kind of a taboo thing in their head because they weren't talked to about it. So they feel uncomfortable talking to their kids. And, as my generation, we want to ask questions. We want to know these things. And I have a friend who's very, very open about asking questions and stuff like that. But when she would talk to her mom or her dad about it, they were like, you shouldn't be thinking about these things. You shouldn't be talking about these things, rather than answering her questions. And it was really hard for her. So my suggestion for kids is especially, even if, like with that mom who's having the anxiety, as the daughter, be patient. Come to them and try to be open with them and ask questions and give them time. Think through and be comfortable talking to you because, as much as it was awkward for mom to answer, it was hard for me to ask the questions too. And you gotta look at it from both perspectives. And as the daughter, you gotta remember you're their little girl, and they're not always gonna be prepared for these questions. And, if they're not ready to answer it then, ask them again later, but don't, in my opinion, don't give up on having that conversation because, having that relationship with your mom is really important and it can really set some major milestones for the future,
So what would Sarah do differently or not?
I would definitely go around the same route that my mom did. And something that I've thought about is, there are those girls that aren't comfortable talking to their moms because they, for some reason, even if their parents have said, come talk to us, we're comfortable talking to you about these things. I hope that it worked out really well because I was very willing to come and talk to my mom, and my mom was very willing to open up and be honest with me. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it is the daughter that's like, I'm just not comfortable talking to my mom about this stuff. And in that case, I really hope that I can put out there, like, if you do have sex and you're scared or, if something happened and you're not okay with it, that at least at that point you'll come to me. I will do everything, and if I become a mom of a daughter, I would do everything in my ability to be able to make sure that they're comfortable talking to me. But even if, something does happen, if, your daughter has sex and they don't come to you first, but, they're coming to you after, at least they're getting to a point where they can talk to you. And I just urge moms to not be like, oh my God, you had sex, and like realize that it's really hard, especially in this day and age for girls, to really like know those boundaries and figure those things out, especially on their own. I know way too many girls that go out and have sex for the first time and feel so bad about themselves, and then on top of that feel like they can't talk to their parents, or if they do talk to their parents, that they're going to be shunned or be badgered about it. And that's not, at least from what I've experienced, that's not something that's ever really helped a girl who's going through that.
Even though Laura has created an open and honest space for her and her daughter, you can hear it in her voice. There's still some shame and stigma associated with her approach. Laura is in fear that her friends might not really understand 100%. Who cares, Laura? Your approach is working.
As a mom, it's been hard for me because I have friends who have both sons and daughters, and hearing how they have their relationships with their kids versus how my relationship with Sarah, sometimes I feel like I'm the weird one. Because I'm so open with Sarah, and sometimes I don't share with my friends how open I am sometimes because I feel like they might be in judgment of me. But for the most part, I would say probably about 80% of my friends are the same way, or they try to be the same way. But they also have kids who are different and don't feel as open with their parents. So I think it runs the gamut. Overall, I think for Sarah and I think we've kind of established some good lines where things work for both of us. I think we've gotten to a comfort level with each other where she knows she can still always come to me for any questions. But for the most part, for both of us now, it's, we talk when we need to talk, and otherwise things, for the most part, I think are going pretty well for her. And when she needs a little guidance, she'll talk to me.
Would you agree? This mother-daughter cycle has been officially broken. Not only is Sarah well-versed in what to expect, she is comfortable, knowledgeable, and has no regrets that some of us do when it comes to puberty, sexual health, our bodies, losing our virginity, or just being able to have the dialogue and not feel prudish about it.
The early conversations that Sarah and I had, we can look back on it, both of us can look back on it and laugh and giggle a little bit about it now. But that's kind of like, that's that mother-daughter intimacy that I didn't have, that I think I craved to have that with Sarah. And now that I do, it's like, it just, I don't know, it comes back to you tenfold. When you invest in even that uncomfortableness, it does. It comes back to you and you feel like, okay, there's a reason why I did this and here's the result now. And it's very satisfying and gratifying as a parent. Yeah, I would definitely say that there were times that she was TMI, but when I hear her talk about how she didn't have that growing up, like, I can't imagine that. I wouldn't be the person I am today if she wasn't as open with me as she was. And I don't think we would have the relationship that we do. As far as, those TMI moments, the thing is that she was so worried about if I thought she was having an awkward moment, she didn't realize that I was having just as much of an awkward moment. As much as I knew I could talk to her about it, it wasn't something that I enjoyed. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm going to torture my mom with these questions,
Right.
So, it's one of those things where it was a two-way street, definitely.
Plant the seeds. Invest in the uncomfortableness. Communication is key. It's all about the conversations and the TMI moments. Don't forget to share the emotion that comes with it and setting those expectations.
Like, I can actually, to the best of my knowledge, answer them to the best of my ability. I have a friend who I actually room with who she wasn't in high school, she got homeschooled, so she never had sex ed. So it's weird, but I feel like she's kind of had the same situation where she's been like, Sarah, can I ask you something? And I totally feel like I'm in my mom's shoes where I'm like, oh God. Which is really funny. It's definitely different coming from a friend's perspective because you can laugh a little bit more about it. It's not quite as serious.
Right.
Not that me and mom didn't laugh about it, but it's just one of those things where they're like, really, Sarah, really? But yeah, it's just one of those things, not to give too much away, but they asked me, I'll just tell this one story because I don't know if I'll say it on other time, but she asked me a couple weeks ago, she's like, what's a circumcised penis?
Oh.
And that was a really awkward conversation. I was like, okay, well, it kind of looks like a normal penis, but it's wearing a turtleneck. And then we went on to Google and Google searched it. So, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm really glad that I know the answers to these things, but at the same time, I totally understand the awkwardness factor.
Every mother-daughter relationship is not always a bed of roses. I get that. I've heard my fair share of cray-cray stuff too, but I wanted to make sure a story of a mother doing it right was represented. If you're looking to break the cycle, use this Laura-daughter relationship as an approach, or just filter out what you're comfortable with as your approach. And for starters, after listening to this episode, share it. Listen to it with your daughter. We all know the struggle is real, not just for mom, but for daughters too. So before we wrap up, there's 5 lessons from this Laura-Sarah effect, I'm gonna call it. Number 1, moms, draw on your own experiences first and then create your plan. It could only get better, right? Commit to breaking that cycle. Number 2, push the nervousness aside. Don't let it get in the way, mom and daughter. Invest in the uncomfortableness and plant your seeds early. This is a two-way street. Number 3, mom, it's either you or Google. This is a generation that asks questions. And if they don't get the answer, they're gonna Google it. Number 4, moms, don't be judgmental or dismissive. This is a natural cycle in everybody's life. Number 5, if you decide your mom is not the person for whatever reason, find the support and circle of friends or family that you trust. And there you have it, Girly Nation. That wraps up another episode of the Keep It 100 Girl Show, where every woman reveals a chapter about herself that they don't even read aloud. Myself and Girly Nation, we tell all our experiences, aha moments, advice, and lastly, we drop mother friggin' girlfriend knowledge, yo. I'm here to empower your ass and give you that weekly dose of self-confidence that puts a pep in your step every week, month, and year. Hope you enjoyed it. Please tweet you listened to this episode by tagging me on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @NinaBabel. Or you know what's even better? Follow me on Snapchat. And in fact, I want you to send me a snap. New episodes of the Keep It 100 Girl Show drop every Tuesday on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher. Don't forget to share the show with your girlies, and anybody who has a question or personal story that you want to personally email, you're going to send it to ask@ninababel.com, and I'm going to feature it on an upcoming show. But I want you to give me some love, Girly Nation. Show me that big girl hug by looking for the Keep It 100 Girls show on iTunes. You're going to leave a rating and review in any language you want and hit submit. Voila! I'm still the new chick on the iTunes block, remember? When you rate and review my podcast, you are helping me and my position in each iTunes category. You could also check my videos on YouTube by typing in the search field Nina Babel. In next week's episode, myself and Girly Nation will be ringing the alarm on this whole lemonade tip fascination from Beyonce. Your fearless ruler has developed her own theory. Girly Nation will touch on those prized possessions called emotions that so many women feel but don't tell. I mean, we do this anyway, right? But next week, it'll be extra special. Thanks, girl. Smooches.